CTV's W5. Underage victims of abuse.
Are you looking for cheap sex?
You can't believe that actually exists in our world.
On the dark side of vacation destinations.
There's a helplessness on the faces of these children.
Pimped out to Canadian sex tourists.
It relies on us to be able to catch the Canadians who are doing this.
Young girls haggled over like pieces of meat.
Victor Mallowick.
You would think if there's a sex offender registry, a red flag would go up.
Investigates the gaps in the system.
Is that going to change?
I think that
It has to change.
That allow these repeat sex offenders.
There will be times when people fall through the cracks.
To terrorize helpless children.
Every day that we wait, another boy, another girl is raped.
And is Lloyd Robertson.
Welcome to W5. A troubling story to begin this week, one that concerns pedophilia, sex with children. It is against the law in Canada, but more and more pedophiles just leave the country to commit their horrendous sexual acts with children in poorer countries. It's called child sex tourism, and the latest popular destination is Cuba. This week, we joined an investigation by the Toronto Star and the Miami Herald to reveal a sordid international problem, and one that Canada is apparently not doing its share to stop. The sad truth is that arrests and convictions for sex tourism are rare, and these twisted travelers almost always get away with it. Critics of the system say there are some easy fixes if the government would pay attention. Here's Victor Mallowick.
Not everyone comes to Cuba to lie on the beach. A growing number, nearly always older men, come here for just one purpose: sex. Toronto Star reporter Robert Cribb went underground with a hidden camera, and what he found was disturbing.
Are you looking for cheap sex? Go to the Hotel de Ville. Whores galore.
Whores galore, according to this Canadian who says he comes here every year.
This is a good place.
It's the latest chapter in a sordid history that stretches back for decades.
The revolution is over. Order has returned to Havana.
Before the revolution in 1959, before Fidel Castro, before the imposition of a communist state, Cuba was known as America's whorehouse. Now it's open to the world, except for Americans. Anyone over 16 can engage in prostitution. But in the slums, out of sight from prying eyes, a new, illegal, and more sinister trade. Little girls and boys, children, hired out to pedophiles by destitute families. This hotel security guard tells Robert he can easily find a young girl for him. And some older prostitutes act as agents for children in return for a cut.
It's very concerning to us as a child advocacy organization and those who work with children.
Mark Hecht is a lawyer with the child advocacy group Beyond Borders.
I think a lot of the countries where these people are going, the police or law enforcement agencies either are uninterested, are under-resourced, or in some cases are simply corrupt. So it really relies on us to be able to catch the Canadians who are doing this abroad, and that's proven very difficult for us to do.
Difficult, but not impossible. On April 19, 2012, an employee in the photomart at this supermarket in Toronto discovered some disturbing images belonging to a customer named James McTurk. The store manager called police, who got a search warrant and arrested 77-year-old McTurk at his apartment. They charged him with possession of child pornography. Turned out McTurk was already known to police. In July 1995, he came to this pharmacy in Stratford, Ontario, to develop photos that turned out to be pornographic. He was arrested by Stratford police and pleaded guilty to possession of child pornography. He was given 2 years probation and a conditional discharge. In 1998, Toronto police executed a search warrant at McTurk's apartment, that same Toronto address they raided in 2012, and found videotapes of him engaging in various sex acts with young girls. He pleaded guilty again to possession of child pornography and was given an 18-month conditional sentence and 18 months probation. In each case, according to police, the images had been shot in Cuba. And now, in 2012, new allegations.
The allegation is that there's photographs of young children, and in those photographs were included the accused as well. Where are we at with that warrant?
Detective Sergeant Kim Gross is the head of the Toronto Police Child Exploitation Section.
You look at the pictures. What thoughts go through your mind?
There's a helplessness on the faces of these children that is very striking.
How did you find out where this alleged crime took place?
The allegation against this individual involves travel to another country, and that information was revealed through his history, as well as looking into his travel history through CBSA, the Canada Border Services Agency, and Passport Canada.
That history showed that McTurk had traveled to Cuba not once, not twice, not 3 times, but 31 times between 2008 and 2012, often staying at this hotel in Veradero. Turns out McTurk was on the sex offender registry and obliged to report any travel over 7 days to police. That condition expired in 2008. After that, the Toronto Police no longer had tabs on his travel, and other agencies just weren't in the loop.
This individual has traveled between 2008 and 2012 31 times to Cuba. You would think a red flag would go up and say, hey folks, we got to really look at this guy.
It's hard to comment on that because there's different agencies with different protocols and different procedures that they have to follow. It would be wonderful if there was someone dedicated to that particular problem. However, I think considering what exists at the time, there will be times when people fall through the cracks. And that could have been exactly what happened here.
People like James McTurk fall through the cracks because there are glaring loopholes in the system that's supposed to keep track of convicted sex offenders, the National Sex Offender Registry.
The convicted child sex offender has to be put on a National Sex Offender Registration and has to report. Now, also in it, it states the only information a sex offender is required to report is that they are leaving Canada and the estimated time of departure and return.
Yes. Yeah, no, they don't even have to say where they're going. The sex offender registry, it's not very effective. It's up to you to inform the people who manage the database that you are leaving the country for a period of time. My inclination and what I hear from law enforcement officials is that, in fact, people don't report when they leave the country. And even if they do report, they don't have to say where they're going.
Don't have to say where they're going. And the Canada Border Service Agency, the CBSA, the agency responsible for controlling who comes in and out of Canada, has no access to the sex offenders registry. Here's why. The registry is administered by the RCMP. If asked, they can share information with other forces, like the Toronto Police. But the CBSA can't get that information because it's not considered to be a police force.
Do you think the CBSA should be linked to the sex offender registry so that they know who's coming back, where they're coming from, and possibly say, we got to look at this guy?
The reality is when it comes to protecting children, I think that this is something that's fairly easy to do that would go very far in terms of protecting kids. We just have to link our system. So, for example, what's going on with the passport office should be linked with what's going on with the sex offender registry, but should also be linked to other legislation. The government should be able to correlate all that information in order to identify those who are at very high risk of offending children.
And while Canada doesn't have a coordinated system, in the United States, it's a different story. A national unit with 74 offices in 48 countries that keeps track of pedophiles when they travel abroad.
As long as we continue to coordinate with the State Department.
Patrick Redling is Chief of Child Exploitation Investigations for ICE, the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Branch of the Department of Homeland Security.
We do work with our various law enforcement partners here in the United States to identify traveling child sex offenders who are traveling abroad, and we work with our attaché offices to pass information.
So your guys would say, hey, this guy is a convicted pedophile. He's going to Cambodia. He's going to Costa Rica or wherever. And we know his MO. So you're going to warn the police over there.
That's correct.
We hear so much from the Harper government about cracking down on crime. And pedophiles are supposedly one of its top priorities. So you'd think that they would be eager to plug gaping holes in a system that allows convicted pedophiles to travel abroad and commit horrific crimes against children. The department that supervises that system is Public Safety. W5 repeatedly asked for interviews with Public Safety Minister Vic Taze, but Vic Taze refused to meet us face to face. However, he told the Toronto Star in a telephone interview that, given the close communication individuals involved with this activity have around the globe, Canada has a greater responsibility to engage in stemming the problem.
Human trafficking is a heinous crime.
Conservative backbencher Joyce Smith has been fighting for tougher laws against sex offenders since she was first elected to Parliament in 2004. And she believes changes are coming.
Right now, as we speak, our government is putting in the cross-border, the entry and the exit border, with all checks and balances. You'll hear about it very, very soon.
So are you saying that the Canada Border Services Agency will get access to the sex offender registry?
They're putting in all the checks and balances so the system is collaborative.
In speaking with the RCMP,
yeah,
they say that the CBSA is not a police force and they cannot therefore have access to the sex offender registry. Is that going to change?
I think that
it has to change.
The system is not in place yet, but all of these are being considered. Everybody has to know what to look for.
Knowing what to look for. And then the next more difficult step. Find those pedophiles who travel abroad to exploit children and bring them to justice.
Next.
The law's there, but nothing's happening.
Why are known Canadian pedophiles traveling freely?
This can't be happening.
To places where they can commit horrendous crimes.
There needs to be stronger measures.
When
Cuba is just the latest in a number of countries around the world catering to tourists looking for sex with children. And one of the other hotspots is Costa Rica. Prostitution is legal, but sex with anyone under 18 is not.
How old is she?
10.
As W5 discovered in 2004, that doesn't mean it's not happening.
So much thanks to